the United States of America, with a history spanning more than 2 centuries, has experienced its share of both good and bad events in this short span of time. Since its founding on July 4, 1776, there have been some significant days when Americans have felt concern for the future of their nation and their own security. Here are the most frightening days in American history that have passed into the chronicles, listed in chronological order.
August 24, 1814. Washington, D.C. burned by the British.
In 1814, during the third year of the War of 1812, at a time when France, under the leadership of Napoleon Bonaparte, repelled the British invasion, England used its considerable military force to seize extensive territories from the still weakly defended United States after defeating the Americans at the Battle of Bladensburg. On August 24, 1814, British forces attacked Washington, setting fire to many government buildings, including the White House. President James Madison and much of his administration fled the city, spending the night in Maryland, Brookville. This place is now known as the one-day capital of the United States. Americans woke up on the morning of August 24, 1814, just 31 years after winning their freedom in the Revolutionary War, to find their capital occupied and burned by the British. The intense rains that began the next day extinguished the fires. The burning of Washington was terrifying and humiliating for Americans. This situation prompted the United States Army to take action against British forces. The Treaty of Ghent, ratified on February 17, 1815, ended the War of 1812, which many Americans celebrated as the Second War of Independence.
December 7, 1941. Pearl Harbor attack.
Yesterday, December 7, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. The United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked.
In December 1941, Americans were preparing to celebrate Christmas with the belief that their government's long-standing policy of isolation would keep them out of the Great War, spreading across Europe and Asia. However, as December 7, 1941, drew to a close, they realized that their hopes were a delusion. In the early hours of the morning, a surprise attack occurred, which President Franklin D. Roosevelt would later describe as a day of infamy. Japanese forces carried out a surprise bombing of the U.S. Pacific Fleet at Pearl Harbor in Hawaii. By the end of the day, 2,345 American military personnel and 57 civilians had died, with 1,247 military personnel and 35 civilians injured. Additionally, 4 battleships and 2 destroyers were sunk, and 188 aircraft were destroyed. The U.S. Pacific Fleet was decimated. Footage of the attack was published in newspapers nationwide on December 8. Americans realized that with the destruction of the Pacific Fleet, the west coast of the U.S. could be vulnerable to a Japanese invasion, as fear of an attack on the mainland grew. President Roosevelt identified more than 117,000 Americans of Japanese descent and relocated them to the Manzanar camp. Americans were now certain they were part of World War II.